lost some.
With a visible effort, she pulled her eyes away. At least you understand, she muttered. I need to. So long as you understand. Gathering her skirts, she swept across the room. The corpse might as well have been a bush. She had to step around. And out. Leaving him in a room dimmer for some reason, alone with a dead man. That fit all too well. When Guy Shine came to bear away the great man, they found Rand laughing softly. Adon Fane sat with his feet up on a hassock, studying the beauty of mood-breaking sunlight, glittering on the curved blade of the dagger, turned over and over in his hands. Carrying it at his belt was not enough. Time to time, he simply the large ruby set in the pommel shone with a deep malevolence. The dagger was part of him, or he of it. The dagger was part of Aradhol, what men called Shadowlogi. But then, he was part of Aradhol too. Or it was part of him. He was part of him, and he knew it very well. Tried to return to his contemplation of the blade, to the perfect beauty of perfect death. The beauty of what Aradhol had been, and would be again. But the Murthrall had broken his concentration. He very nearly went over and killed the thing. Half-men took a long time to die. How long did he use the dagger? As it stirred his thoughts, it stirred again. It was hard for him to concentrate on one thing for long anyway. Except Randall Thor, of course. He could feel Thor point to him, his clothes. Thor pulled at him. Pulled till it hurt. There was a difference lately. A difference that had come suddenly. Just as if someone else had suddenly taken a partial possession of Thor, and in doing so pushed away a part of things in possession. He wished he could feel Thor's pain. Surely he had caused him pain at least. Pinpricks only so far, but enough pinpricks would drain him down. The white cloaks were set hard against the dragon fire. Fane's lips peeled back in a sneer. Unlikely Niall would have ever supported Thor, any more than Elijah would have. But it was best not to take too much for granted with Rand bloody Thor. Well, he had brushed them both, Bloody Day and Aradhol. They might possibly trust their own mothers, but never Thor now. The door burst open. Young Erwin Bellman burst into the room, pursued by his mother. Nan Bellman was a handsome woman, though Fane seldom noticed whether Olin was or not charming. A dark friend who had thought her oaths were just dabbling in wickedness until Adon Fane appeared on her doorstep. She believed him a dark friend too. He would be dead the moment one of the Chosen laid hands on him. The thought made him giggle. Derwin and his mother both shied at the sight of the Murthrall, of course, but the boy recovered first and reached Fane while the woman was still trying to find her breath. Master Mordeth! Master Mordeth! The boy piped, dancing from foot to foot in his red and white coat. I have news you wanted. Had he used that name? Sometimes he could not recall what name he had used. What name was his? Sheathing the dagger beneath his coat, he put on a warm smile. And what news would that be now, Rand? Someone tried to kill the Dragon Reborn this morning. He's dead now. He got right past all the Aiel and everything, right into the Lord Dragon's rooms. Bane felt his smile become a snarl. He tried to kill Althor. Althor was his. Althor would die by his hand, no other. Wait. The assassin had gotten past the Aiel into Althor's rooms. A Grey Man! He did not recognize that grating sound as his own voice. Grey Men meant the Chosen. Would he never be free of their interference? All that rage had to go somewhere before he burst. Almost casually, he brushed his hand across the boy's face. The boy's eyes bulged. He began trembling so hard his teeth rattled. Bane did not really understand the tricks he could work. A bit of something from the Dark One, perhaps. A bit from Auriel. It had been after he stopped being just Adam Bane, where the ability began to manifest. Slowly. All he knew was that he could do certain things now, as long as he could touch what he worked with. Nan flung herself to her knees beside his chair, clutching at his coat. "Mercy, Master Mordith," she panted. "Please have mercy. He's only a child. Only a child." For a moment, he was seriously, his head tilted. She was quite a pretty woman, really. Planting a foot against her chest, he shoved her aside so he could stand. The Murdrawl, peeking furtively, jerked its eyeless face away when it saw him watching. It remembered his tricks very well. Bane paced. He had to move. Althor's downfall had to be his doing. His, not the Chosen's. How could he hurt the man again? The heart. There were the girls of Gulane's eyes. Would he care even if Bane burned the inn down and the chits with it? What did he have to work with? Only a few remained of his one-time children of the light. Had it only been a test, really. He would have made the man who actually managed to kill Althor beg to be skinned alive. Yet it had cost him numbers. He had the Murdrawl, a handful of Trollocs hidden outside the city, 2 dark friends gathered in Cainton and on the way from Tarbat. The pull of Althor dragged him on. It was the most remarkable thing about dark friends. There should be nothing to single out a dark friend from anyone else. But of late, he found he could tell them at a glance, even someone who had only thought of swearing to the shadow, as if they had a sooty mark on their foreheads. No, he had to concentrate. Concentrate. Clear his mind. His eye fell on the woman, moaning and stroking her gibbering son, talking to him softly as if that would help. Bane had no notion how to stop one of his tricks once it began. The boy should survive, if a trifle the worse for wear, once the thing ground to a conclusion. Bane did not put his whole heart into making it. Something else. Pretty woman. How long since he had had one? Smiling, he took her arm. He had to pull her away from the fool boy. "Come with me." His voice was different, grander. The Lugard accent gone. But he did not notice. He never did. "I am sure you, at least, know how to show true respect. If you please me, no harm will come to you." Why was she struggling? He knew he was being charming. He was going to have to hurt her. It was all Althor's fault.
Chapter 29. Fire and Sweat. Pausing in the shade in front of the little tower, Nynaeve carefully dabbed at her face, then tucked the handkerchief back up her sleeve. Not that it did much good. The sweat popped out again right away, but she wanted to look her best inside. She wanted to look cool, serene, dignified. Small chance of that. Her temples were throbbing, and her stomach felt fragile. She had not been able to look at breakfast this morning. Just the heat, of course, but she wanted to go back to her bed, curl up, and die. To top it off, her weather sense was nagging at her. The molten sun should have been hidden by roiling black clouds and threatening bolts of lightning. The warders lounging out front did not look like giants at first glance, but they were. They reminded her of the Aiel she had seen in the Stone of Tyr. They probably looked like wolves, even when asleep. A bald, square-faced man, no taller than she, but nearly as wide as he was tall, trotted out of the little tower and down the street, the hilt of the sword on his back, thrusting over his shoulder. Even George, bonded to Mordrin, managed it. Top-knotted Uno passed, threading his horse through the crowd and hardly seeming to acknowledge the heat, despite the steel plates and mail that covered him from the shoulders down. He twisted in his saddle to watch her with his good eye, and Perdita hadn't talked. Every time she saw her, obviously waiting for her to ask him for horses. Even Elaine could not say well, she could, and she should not. Uno rode out of sight. Nynaeve sighed. She was just trying to put off going inside. Mirella might be there. Blotting her eyes, she frowned at her wrinkled hand, scrubbing pots, with 29 more to go. 29! And went in. It was slightly cooler in what had been the common room when the little tower was offering a little relief to her aching head. Everyone called it the waiting room now. No time had been wasted for repairs here. The fireplaces had stones missing, and lathing showed through holes in the plaster.
Take a drink after
Arena
that
and
one.
Nicola were working brooms with another novice, but making little impression on the age-roughened floor. Arena wore a scowl, but then she was never pleased at having to do chores with the novices. No one went choreless in Salidon. At the far end of the room, Ramonda was speaking with two slender, aged Aes Sedai. Their faces might be ageless, but their hair was white. Plainly new arrivals, but still hanging down their heads. No sign of Mirella, which brought a sigh of relief. The woman raked Nynaeve over the coals at every opportunity, then raked her the other way. Aes Sedai sat at tables, mismatched, carefully arranged in rows, working over parchments or issuing orders to warders and servants, but fewer than the first time she had seen them. Only the sitters and the servants lived on the floor above now. Everyone else had been removed to make space for Aes Sedai to work in. The little tower had taken on attributes of the White Tower, the precise formality above all. When Nynaeve first saw this room, it had a bustle about it, an air of something being done. A false air, then. Now it seemed almost slow, but it was the feel of the White Tower. Approaching one of the tables, not the nearest, she curtsied carefully. Pardon, Aes Sedai, but I was told Swan and Lyanna are here. Could you tell me where to find them? Brenda's pen stopped moving, and she looked up with cool, dark eyes. Nynaeve had chosen her instead of someone near at the door. Was one of the few eyes her girls had about Brand. Once, when Swan had chosen Brenda as one who could be trusted. That had nothing to do with this, but Nynaeve found small comforts where she could. They are with some of the sitters, child. Brenda's voice was chimes, as emotionless as her pale face. White seldom showed emotion, but Brenda's never showed any. Nynaeve stifled an irritated sigh. She had them reporting on their eyes and ears, but not be free for hours yet. Maybe not for the rest of the day. By then, she would be head down among the pots. Thank you, Aes Sedai. Brenda stopped her curtsy
I'm
with a
not trying to
gesture.
fight this one.
Did Theodren make any progress with you yesterday? No, Aes Sedai. If her voice was a bit tight, a touch curt, she had reason. Theodren had said she meant to try everything, and apparently she was trying everything. It involved sipping wine to relax her, only somehow Nynaeve had ended up taking more than just a few sips. She did not think she would ever forget being carried back to her room singing. Singing! Or remember without going red in the face. Brenda's had to know. Everyone had to know. Nynaeve wanted to writhe. I only ask because your studies seem to be suffering. After several sisters remarked that you appear to have reached the end of your remarkable discoveries. Your extra chores might be the problem, but Elaine reveals something every day, even with teaching her breaking of the pots. A number of people are wondering whether they might not be able to help and see if they can. If we took it in turns, working you all day, every day, might prove more fruitful than these informal sessions with someone who is, after all, little more than accepted herself. It was all delivered in a level tone without the slightest accusation, yet Nynaeve's face heated as if she had been shouted at. I'm sure your friend will find the key any day, Aes Sedai, she almost whispered. I will try harder, Aes Sedai. Bobbing a hurried curtsy, she whirled around before Brendas could stop her again, with the result that she bumped into one of the two white-haired newcomers. They looked enough alike to be sisters, almost mirror images of one another, with fine bones and long patrician faces. The bump was more of a brush, really, and she did try to apologize. The Aes Sedai fixed her with a stare to do a halt crowd. Watch where you are going, Accepted. In my day, an Accepted who tried to trample Aes Sedai would have had hair whiter than mine by the time she finished scrubbing floors. The other touched her arm. Oh, do let the child go, Vandene. We have work to do. Vandene directed a sharp sniff at Nynaeve, but allowed herself to be led outside. Waiting a moment to let them leave, Nynaeve saw Shiriam come out of one of the meeting rooms with Mirella, Morgan, and Beonin. Mirella saw her too and started in her direction, but only a step before Shiriam and Morgan each put a hand on the Green Sister's arms and spoke quickly and softly.
There we go.
This
had to be just a hose.
Still talking before crossed the room and disappeared. Waited until she was back in front of the little tower before giving her braid a firm, deliberate tug. They had met the wise ones last night. Guessing why the others had stopped Mirella from speaking was easy enough. If Egwene had finally been there in the heart of the Nynaeve Almira was scrubbing pots like a novice when she might have been at least a step higher than Accepted. Nynaeve Almira was getting nowhere with Theodrin, and all her marvelous discoveries had dried up. Nynaeve Almira would never be an Aes Sedai. She had known it was a mistake to start funneling everything from Moghedien through Elaine. She had known it. She had been the one to suggest it herself, but it was still a mistake. Aes Sedai were no longer talking about her innovations, they talked about the lack of them. She had never taken more than a passing interest in her plot, and how to break it down. She could not win. One way or another, she was going to end up with Aes Sedai examining her from hair to toenails, sun up to sundown. She yanked harder on her braid, hard enough to hurt her scalp, and the way her head felt, that did nothing for her temper. A soldier in an archer's flat helmet and padded jerkin slowed to look at her curiously, but she gave him such a stare of refined malevolence that he stumbled over his own feet and quickly lost himself in the throng. Why did Elaine have to be so stubborn? A man's hands closed on her shoulders, and she whirled about with words that would rip his head from his neck. They died on her tongue. Tom Merrilin grinned down at her through his long white mustaches, sharp blue eyes twinkling in his gnarled face. By the look of you, I'd almost think you were angry, but I know you have such a sweet disposition people ask you to dabble your fingers in their tea. Julian Sandor was there beside him, a lean fellow looking carved from dark wood, leaning on his thumb-thick bamboo staff. Julian was Tyron, not Tarabunner, but he still wore that ridiculous flat-topped conical red cap, even more battered than she had last seen it. He snatched it off when she glanced at him. Both men were dusty and travel-worn, their faces gaunt, though neither had been particularly fleshy to begin with. They looked as if they had spent the week since leaving Salidar sleeping in their clothes when they were not in the saddle. Before Nynaeve could open her mouth, they were hit by a human storm. Elaine flung herself at Tom so hard he staggered. He, of course, put his hands under her arms and hoisted her, whirling her around in a circle like a child, despite his slight limp. He was laughing when he set her down again, and so was she. She reached up and tugged at one of his mustaches, and they fell to laughing even harder. He examined her hands, as wrinkled as Nynaeve's, asking what sort of trouble she had dived into without him to keep her on the straight and narrow, and she replied that she had no need of anyone to tell her what to do, only she spoiled it by blushing and giggling and biting her lip. Nynaeve took a deep breath. Sometimes the pair of them took playing at father and daughter entirely too far. Sometimes Elaine seemed to think she was about 10, and so did Tom. "I thought you had a novice class this morning, Elaine." The other woman by her side, then gathered herself in an attempt at decorum that came too late, and set about straightening her banded dress. "I asked Kalindin to take it," she said casually. "I thought I might keep you company, and I'm glad I did," she added with a grin for Tom. "Now we can hear everything you learned in Amadisia." Nynaeve sniffed. Keep her company indeed. She did not remember everything about yesterday, but she remembered Elaine laughing while getting her undressed and putting her to bed with the sun not yet all the way down. And she was sure she remembered the woman asking whether she wanted a bucket of water to cool her head. Tom noticed nothing. Most men were blind.
Hey, how you doing?
"It will have to be quick," he said. "Now Sherion's
Oh,
latest
I'm blazing
needs
it.
to have us report to some of the sitters in person. Luckily, it boils down well enough. There aren't enough white cloaks along the Eldar to keep a mouse from crossing if he had drums and trumpets to announce him a day ahead. Except for a strong force on the Tarabon River and the men he has trying to hold back the Prophet in the north. Nile seems to be gathering every last white cloak around Amadisia, and Isleron is pulling in his soldiers too. Talk of Salidar had started in the streets before we left, but if Nile has even thought about the place twice, I could not find a hint of it anywhere. "Tarabon," Julian muttered, studying his cap. "Oh, ill.
The hose is for
One who doesn't know how to take care of herself." So we heard.
to touch that.
Nynaeve was not sure which of the two was best at dissembling, but she was sure either could lie to your face to make a woman
Yeah.
blue with envy. And right now, she was sure they were hiding something.
So just get this.
Elaine saw more than that. Gripping Tom's lapel, she peered up at him. "You heard something about Mother," she said calmly, and it was not a question. Tom knuckled his mustaches. "There are 100 rumors on every street in Amadisia, child, each wilder than the last." His gnarled, leathery face was pure innocence and openness, but the man had not been innocent the day he was born. "It's said the whole white with 10,000 warders ready to go. It's said Aes Sedai have and land has wings he uses to fly around at night. And Elaine said. He snorted, glaring at Julian and Nynaeve as though this were their fault. "Child, it's just a rumor, as crazed as any we heard. I could not confirm anything, and believe me, I tried. I meant not to mention it. It just stirs up your pain. Let it pass, child." Tom, much firmer, shifting his feet, and looked as if he wished he were somewhere else.
It was an attachment to it was called
Must hear it.
and well, the brand name of it was Aluka Seahorse.
An army of white cloaks back to Andor.
It was kind of like
Her head, laughing softly.
a rechargeable, like little nectar collector, but this was made to fit on that and fit on like a water piece, so you could use the nectar collector and use it the dab rig too. But I just got curious one day, since that the original one I had ended up breaking, or I gave it to someone, I think. But I kept this, and I was curious to see if it would work, and it does. Just put it there, and make sure it's snug there. And
hard as it was to believe, he had been Morghez's lover once, when she was young. back then he must not have looked as though he had been left to dry in the sun too long. Elaine knew little more of how or why it happened than he slip out of England with an arrest. Not the mark of a love to be told in the stories. At the moment, he certainly appeared concerned only with whether Elaine was telling the truth or hiding her hurt, with patting her shoulder and stroking her head.
But putting the silicone.
If Nynaeve had not wished they would just once snap at one another like normal people, she would have thought it a pretty picture. A throat clearing. Master Marilyn, Tabitha said, spreading her white dress in a quick curtsy. Master Sandor? Shiriam Sadai says the sitters are ready to receive you. She says you were not supposed to leave the little tower.
That was that one.
Tom said dryly, eyeing the former inn. Elaine, they can't keep us free. When we're done, you can discuss whatever you wish. Motioning Tabitha to leave, he marched inside. His limp
Now time for
the way it
this
was
one.
when he was tired.
And they're just
Evelyn squared his shoulders
irregular,
as though walking to a gallows. He was
disposable ones.
Nynaeve and Elaine stood there, neither quite looking at the other. Finally, Nynaeve said, I was not, at the same time that Elaine said, I should not. They cut off together.
Slide it on.
Moments passed in fidgeting with skirts and blotting faces. It is too hot to just stand here, Nynaeve said at last. It was unlikely that the sitters who were hearing Swan and Liana's reports would stop to hear Tom and Julie's. They split such things among them. That left Lou game, much as she wished it did not. She would not learn anything.
It's
But it was better than twiddling
that's
her thumb
definitely
until the
effective.
dozen eyes descended on her with an hourly
allows you to hit your carts bigger hits, but it definitely
that helped Nynaeve find the anger she was going to need. Abruptly, she
you will go through it faster, but you'll get bigger rips.
She asked softly.
And
No one in the street would understand if they heard, but caution once for
you can't tell from like hacking up along, but
Where is Marigan?
most of the time it's pretty
The
smooth.
bracelet is in my pouch, Nynaeve. Elaine stepped aside to let a high-wheeled cart pass, then joined Nynaeve again behind the cart. Marigan is doing our laundry with about 20 other women around her, and groaning every
That one
time
wasn't a very good one.
She said something.
See, I'm gonna need to charge this battery finally.
Gita had to take that thing off, Nynaeve. Gita had the right. It hurt. I told Marigan to say she fell down some stairs. Nynaeve sniffed, but her heart was not in it. She had not been wearing the bracelet much of late, not because she could not handle
Okay.
anything she
One sec.
She was still sure Moghedien knew something about it.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Realize it herself. Nobody could be that blind. The trick of detecting Moghedien kept saying they almost had right. The truth of it was, she was afraid she might do far worse than Brigitte had, if she had any more contact with the woman than was absolutely necessary. Maybe it was the way satisfaction seemed to underlie everything else,
Let's see now.
even when Moghedien was groaning from the fed-back pain of Nynaeve trying to master that detection. Maybe it was
A little bit better. But yeah, I think it
maybe growing disgust at keeping one of the Forsaken from judgment. Maybe some of all of it. What she did know was that she had to make herself put on the bracelet now, and that whenever she saw Moghedien's face, she wanted to pound it with her fists. I should not have laughed, Elaine said. I am sorry I did. Nynaeve
They ain't
said
gonna either
that a horseman had to jerk his
put your
reins
regular nail back on it, or
he shouted something before
I
the
just
crowd
pretty
gathered
much
away, but shock muffled his words
just to
beyond
keep
the
this
hearing.
out of the way.
Not shock at the apology, at what she had to say. The right thing to say. The truth. Unable to look at him. She swallowed hard. I made a complete fool of myself. She had. A few sips, the Edwin said. A cup, and she emptied the pitcher. If you were going to fail, it's better to have some other reason than that you just could not do it. You should have sent for that bucket and dumped my head until I could recite the great hunt of the horn without a mistake. She risked a glance from the corner of her eye. Small spots of color rested in Elaine's cheeks. So there had been mention of a bucket. It could happen to anyone, the other woman said simply. Nynaeve felt her own cheeks heating. When it had happened to Elaine, she had dunked the girl to wash away the wine. You should have
Smoking
done what we did too.
the last
So
bowl of
it was
or at least the last bowl for me that my brother gave me of some of his 1%er we just harvested.
While Elaine made excuse after excuse for her. Nynaeve did not
He hooked my container up with a nice little stash.
all the blame on herself that way. She could not recall ever doing that before, not without hedging as far as she was able. She very nearly got angry with Elaine for not agreeing that she had been a childish buffoon. It lasted until they reached the small thatched house on the edge of the village where Logain was kept. If you don't stop this, Elaine said finally, I vow I'll send for a bucket of water right this instant. Nynaeve opened her mouth. Even found euphoria of admitting she had been wrong. That was going too far. Feeling this good, she could not face Logain. Feeling this good, it would be useless anyway. Without Moghedien and the bracelet, she definitely felt too fine to put on. She glanced at the two warders standing guard beside the stone-linteled door. They were not close enough to hear, but she still pitched her voice low. Elaine, let's go. Tonight. With Tom and Jewelin in Salidar, there was no need to ask Uno to find horses. Not to Cainlan if you don't want. To Abu Dar. Merlilla will never find that bowl, and Shira will never let us go find it. What do you
Stormy
say?
night, oh shit.
No, Nynaeve. What good can we do Rand if they take us for runaways, which is what we'd be? You promised, Nynaeve. You promised if we found something. I promised if we found something we could use. All we've found is this. Nynaeve thrust her shriveled hands under the other woman's nose. The firmness slid from Elaine's face and her voice. She pursed her lips and studied the ground. Nynaeve, you know I told Birgitta we were staying. Well, it seems she told Uno that under no circumstances was he to provide you with a horse unless she said so. She told him you were thinking of running away. I didn't find out until it was too late. Head tossed, irritated. If this is what having a warder is like, I don't know why anyone wants one. Nynaeve thought her eyes might burst from indignation. So that's why he had been staring at her. Euphoria vanished in a heat of, well, partly anger, partly humiliation. The man knew. He thought she... Wait. For a moment she frowned at Elaine, then decided not to voice the question that had come to mind. Was Nynaeve the only name Birgitta had mentioned to Uno? Or was Elaine perhaps included? Elaine had found herself quite an adopted family. In Tom, an indulgent father who wanted to teach her everything he knew, and in Birgitta, an older sister who thought it was her job to keep the younger from breaking her neck riding horses she could not handle yet. In that case, she said flatly, let's see what I can learn from Logain. It was a small house, only 2 rooms, but thick stone walls made it relatively cool. Logain was in his shirt sleeves, smoking a pipe and reading by a window. The Aes Sedai were taking good care of him. The chairs and tables were as fine as anything in Salidar. Nothing elaborate, but well done, though nothing like anything else. And a scroll-woven red and gold carpet covered much of a floor that was swept so clean, Nynaeve doubted he did the sweeping. He set his book down when they entered, seemingly not at all put out by the lack of a knock. Rising leisurely, he tapped out his pipe, donned his coat, and only then
Hell yeah.
smooth leg. It is good to see you again after so long. I thought you had forgotten me. Will you join me in some wine? The Aes Sedai keep me on short supply, but what they do let me have is not bad at all. The offer of wine would have been enough. Nynaeve barely suppressed a wince, if she had needed more. Thinking of Uno, the fact that he was male was enough. No need to pull up any of her anger from the little tower. Thinking of it added its bit, though. The true source was suddenly there, an unseen warmth just out of sight. She opened herself, and Salidar flooded her. If what she had felt earlier was euphoria, this was beyond ecstasy. She was surrendering to it. Burn, Theodrin. Sit down, she told him coldly. I'll have no chatter out of you. Answer when you're spoken to, and otherwise hold your tongue. Logain only shrugged and complied, meek as a puppy. No, not meek. That smile was pure insolence. Part came from his feelings toward Aes Sedai. Nynaeve was certain. And part, he watched Elaine take another chair, arranging
No
her
shit.
skirts with studied care. And if she had not seen what he was looking at, she would have known it was a woman. There was no smirking about
No,
it,
is it?
no leering.
I've been playing
Nynaeve did not know
the new
what.
Mortal Kombat. I just barely finished the story mode of it.
She was a woman and he a man. Maybe it was just that he was handsome and had broad shoulders, but she liked to think better of herself. Of course, that was not it. Clearing her throat, she wove filaments of Saidar into him, air and water, fire and earth, spirit, all the elements of healing, but used now to probe. It would have helped to lay her hands on him, but she could not bring herself to do that. Bad enough to touch him with the power. He was healthy as a bull, and almost as strong. Nothing wrong with him in the slightest, except for the hole. It was not really a hole, or a feeling that what seemed continuous was not, that what seemed smooth and straight was really skirting around an absence. She knew that sensation well from the early days.
They definitely did a good job on the graphics and
He looked up at her and
everything on it.
she did not remember moving closer. His face was fixed in a mask of brazen contempt. She might not be Aes Sedai, but she was the next thing to it. How can you do all of that at once? Elaine asked. I could not keep track of half of it. Hush, Nynaeve murmured. Hiding the effort required, she took Logain's head in her hands roughly. Yes, it was better with physical contact. The impression was sharper. She directed the full flow of Saidar into where the hole should have been, and was almost surprised to find an emptiness. Of course, she still did not expect to learn anything. Men were as different from women in the power as they were in the flesh, maybe more so. She might as well study a rock to find out. It was hard to keep her thoughts on what she was doing, knowing she was only going through motions, killing time, as it were. What is Mirella going to say? Would she keep back a message from Egwene? That emptiness, so small she could pass right over it, was vast once she slipped the flows inside, immense enough to swallow them all. If only I could talk to Egwene, I'll wager once she knows the tower is sending an embassy to Rand, and the Aes Sedai here are just sitting on their hands, she'll help me convince Elaine we've done all we can here. Vast emptiness, nothingness. What about what she had found in Swan and Lyanna? The feel of something cut. She was sure it was real, however faint. Men and women might be different, but maybe all I need to do is talk to her somehow. She'll see that Rand would be better off with us there. Elaine will listen to her. Elaine thinks Egwene knows Rand better than anybody else. There it was. Something cut. Just an impression, but the same as in Swan and Lyanna. So how do I find her? If only she'd pop into our dreams again. I'll bet I can talk her into joining us. The three of us would do much better with Rand. Together we could tell him what we learn in Tel Aran-Riyadh. Keep him from making some wool-headed mistake with the Aes Sedai. She'll see that. Something about that cut. If it was bridged with fire and spirit, so... It was the slight widening of Logain's eyes that told her what she had done. Breath froze in her throat. She backed away from him so fast she stumbled over her skirt. Nynaeve, Elaine said, sitting up straight. What is the matter? A heartbeat, and Nynaeve had all of Saidar she could hold redirected into a shield. Go find Shiriam, she said hurriedly. Nobody else but Shiriam. Tell her... She drew a deep breath that seemed like her first in hours. Her heart was speeding to beat galloping horses. Tell her I've healed Logain. Chapter 30. To heal again. Something pushed against the shield Nynaeve had fastened between Logain and the true source, building until the shield began to bend, and the weave trembled on the brink of ripping apart. She let Saidar flow through her, sweetness reaching the very edge of pain, channeling every thread into spirit, into the shield. Go, Elaine! She did not care one bit if it came out a squeak. Elaine, the light shine on her, wasted no time on questions. She bounded out of her chair and was gone at a dead run. Logain had not moved a muscle. His eyes held Nynaeve's. They seemed to shine. And he was big. She fumbled for her belt knife, realized how ridiculous that was. He could probably take it away from her without sweating at Rock more than he already was. His shoulders suddenly seemed as wide as she was tall, and diverted some of her weave to air, to bonds that fastened him right where he sat, arm and leg. He was still big, yet suddenly he looked more normal, entirely manageable. Only then did it occur to her that she had lessened the strength of the shield, but she could not channel a hair more. Already the pure joy of life that was saidar was so strong in her that she nearly wanted to weep. He smiled at her. One of the warders put his head in at the door, a dark-haired man with a bold nose and a deep white scar running along his lean jaw. Is anything amiss? The other accepted. She went running like she had sat in the nettle patch. Everything is quite under control, she told him coolly, as coolly as she could manage. Nobody must know. Nobody, until she had a chance to speak with Shiriam, to get the woman on her side. Elaine just remembered something she had forgotten. That sounded inane. You may leave us. I am busy. Tervail, that was his name, Tervail Jura, bonded to Ben, and what under the light did his name matter? Tervail gave her a wide grin and a mocking bow before retreating. Warders seldom let accepted get by with playing at Aes Sedai. Not licking her lips took considerable effort. She studied Logain. He was outwardly calm, as if nothing had changed. There's no need for this, Nynaeve. Do you think I'll decide to attack a village with hundreds of Aes Sedai? They'd chop me to pieces before I took 2 steps. Be quiet, she said mechanically. Fumbling behind her, she found a chair and sat down, never taking her eyes off him. What was keeping Shiriam? Shiriam had to understand it was an accident. She had to. Anger at herself was the only thing that kept her able to channel. How could she have been so careless? Such a blind idiot. No, Logain said. I won't turn against them now. They're succeeding in what I want, whether they know it or not. The Red Ajah is finished. In a year, there won't be an Aes Sedai will dare admit she's red. I said be quiet, she snapped. Do you think I'll believe it's only reds you hate? You know, I saw a man once who will cause more trouble than I ever did. Maybe it was the Dragon Reborn. I don't know. It was when they took me through Caemlyn after I was captured. He was far away, but I saw a glow, and I knew he'd shake the world. Caged as I was, I couldn't help laughing. Shifting a small portion of the air holding him, she forced it between his jaws for a gag. His brows lowered in dark anger, gone in a flash, but she did not care. She had him secure now. At least, he had not attempted to struggle at all, but that could be because he had known from the first that she would only snare him. It could. But how hard had he tried to break through her shield? That push, not exactly slow in building, but certainly not fast, almost like a man stretching muscles long unused, pushing at something not with the intent of moving it, but just from the need to feel those muscles again. The thought turned her belly to ice. Infuriatingly, Logain's eyes crinkled in amusement, almost as though he knew everything that had passed through her head. He sat there with his mouth gaping foolishly, bound and shielded, and he was the one at his ease. How could she have been such a fool? She was not fit to be Aes Sedai, not if her block crumbled this instant. She was not fit to be let out alone. They ought to tell Birgitte to make sure she did not fall on her face in the dust trying to cross the street. It was not intentional, but berating herself kept her anger on a slow simmer until the door burst open. It was not Elaine. Shiriam followed Ramonda in, with Mirella and Morfrin and Takima close behind. Then Lelaine and Janya, Delena and Baratine and Bayonin, more, crowding in until they filled the room. Nynaeve could see others through the door, but no room to close. Those inside peered at her and her weaving so intently that she swallowed hard, and all her fine anger collapsed. And, of course, so did her shield and the bonds holding Logain. Before Nynaeve could ask somebody to shield him again, Nisao planted herself in front of her. Short as Nisao was, she managed to loom. Now what is all this nonsense about you healing him? Is that what she said she did? Logain actually managed to sound surprised. Varilyn crowded in beside Nisao. The slender, red-haired Grey loomed by virtue of being as tall as Logain. I feared this as soon as everyone began petting her over her discoveries. Once they ran out, the petting stopped, and she was sure to make some wild claim to get back. It was letting her moon over Swan and Liana, Ramonda said firmly. And this fellow. She should have been told there are things that cannot be healed, and there's an end to it. But I did, Nynaeve protested. I did. Please shield him. Please, you must. The Aes Sedai in front of her turned to look at Logain, opening just enough space for her to see him too. He met all the stares with a bland face. He even shrugged. I think the least we can do is shield him until we are absolutely certain, Shiriam suggested. Ramonda nodded, and a shield sprang into being strong enough to hold a giant as the glow of Saidar surrounded nearly every woman in the room. Ramonda restored a little order by briskly naming 6 to maintain a lesser but adequate shield. Mirella's hand closed around Nynaeve's arm. If you will forgive us, Ramonda, we need to talk to Nynaeve alone. Shiriam's hand closed on the other arm. Best if we don't leave it too long. Ramonda nodded absently. Most of the Aes Sedai were. Nobody was leaving. Shiriam and Mirella pulled Nynaeve to her feet and propelled her toward the door. What are you doing? She demanded breathlessly. Where are you taking me? Outside, they jostled through the throng of Aes Sedai, many of whom peered at her sharply, even accusingly. They pushed right by Elaine, who grimaced apologetically. Nynaeve looked over her shoulder as the 2 Aes Sedai hustled her along so quickly she kept stumbling. Not that she expected Elaine to help her, but it might be the last time she saw her. Baonin was saying something to Elaine, who darted away through the crowd. What are you going to do to me? Nynaeve moaned. We will keep you scrubbing pots for the rest of your knackered life, Shiriam said conversationally. Mirella nodded. You could work in the kitchens all day. We could have you switched every day instead. Peel your hide off in strips. Nail you into a barrel and feed you through the bunghole in the end. Only mush. Stale mush. Nynaeve's knees sagged. It was an accident. I swear I didn't mean to. Shiriam gave her a hard shake without slowing the step. Don't be a fool, child. You may just have done the impossible. You believe me? You believe me? Why didn't you say something when Nisao and Varilyn and... Why didn't you say something? I said nay, child. Shiriam's voice was depressingly neutral. Another possibility, Mirella said, is that your brain has swollen from strain. Her lidded eyes regarded Nynaeve. You would be surprised at the number of accepted and even novices who claim they've rediscovered some lost talent or found anew. When I was a novice, an accepted named Ichiko was so convinced she knew how to fly, she leaped from the top of the tower. Head spinning, Nynaeve looked from one woman to the other. Did they believe her or not? Did they really think her mind had bent? What under the light are they going to do to me? She tried to find words to convince them. She was not lying, not crazy. She had healed Logain, but her mouth was still working soundlessly when they hurried her into the little tower. Not until they entered what had been a private dining room, a long chamber where now a narrow table stood with chairs behind it near one wall, did Nynaeve realize they had gained a train of followers. More than a dozen Aes Sedai entered on their heels, Nisao folding her arms tightly beneath her breasts, and Dagdara with her chin thrust forward, as though meaning to walk through a wall. Shanella and Thurva and all yellow Aja, save Shiriam and Mirella. That table suggested a magistrate's chamber. That line of grim faces spoke of a trial. Nynaeve swallowed hard. Shiriam and Mirella left her standing and walked over to the table to confer quietly, their backs to her. When they turned again, their faces were unreadable. You claimed that you healed Logain. There was a hint of contempt in Shiriam's voice. You claim you healed a gentle man. You must believe me, Nynaeve protested. You said you did. She jumped as something unseen struck her hard across the hips. Remember yourself, accepted, Shiriam said coldly. Do you make this claim? Nynaeve stared at the woman. Shiriam was the one praised, bouncing back and forth this way. Still, she managed a respectful, yes, Aes Sedai. Dagdara snorted like canvas whipping. Shiriam gestured to quiet a murmur among the yellows. And you did it by accident, you say? If that's the case, I suppose there is no chance of you showing proof by doing it again. How could she? Mirella said, looking amused. Amused? If she fumbled her way into it blindly, how could she possibly repeat it? But that would not matter unless she actually did the thing in the first place. Answer me, Shiriam snapped, and that invisible switch struck again. This time Nynaeve managed not to leave. Is there any chance you can remember even part of what you did? I remember, Aes Sedai, she said sullenly, tensing for another blow. It did not come, but she could see the glow of Saidar around Shiriam now. That glow seemed threatening. A small commotion at the door, and Carlinia and Beonin pushed ahead through the line of yellow sisters, one shoving Swan ahead of her, the other Lyanna. They did not want to come, Beonin announced in an exasperated tone. Can you believe that they tried to tell us that they were busy? Lyanna was as blank-faced as any Aes Sedai, but Swan darted sullen, angry looks at everybody, especially Nynaeve. Finally, Nynaeve understood. Finally, everything came together. The Yellow Sisters' presence. Shiriam and Mirella believing, then not believing, threatening her, snapping at her. It was all a purpose, all to make her angry enough to work her healing on Swan and Lyanna, to prove herself to the Yellows. No. By their faces, they were here to see her fail, not succeed. She made no effort to hide the firm tug she gave her braid. In fact, she did it again, in case anyone had missed the first time. She wanted to smack all their faces. She wanted to dose them with a concoction of herbs that would make them sit down on the floor and cry like babies just from the smell. She wanted to yank their hair out and strangle them with it. Do I have to put up with this nonsense? Swan growled. I have important work to do. But if it were only heading fish, it would be more than... Oh, shut up! Nynaeve broke in testily. One step, and she seized Swan's head in both hands as if she intended to break the woman's neck. She had believed that nonsense, even the barrel. They had manipulated her like a puppet. Saidar filled her, and she channeled as she had with Logain, blending all of the 5 powers. She knew what she was looking for this time, that almost not there at all sense of something cut, spirit and fire to mend the break, and for a moment Swan only stared, expressionless. Then the glow of Saidar enveloped her. Gasps filled the room. Slowly Swan leaned forward and kissed Nynaeve on either cheek. A tear leaked down her face, then another, and abruptly Swan was weeping, hugging herself and shaking. The gleaming aura around her faded away. Shiriam quickly folded her into comforting arms. Shiriam looked as though she might cry too. The rest of the room was staring at Nynaeve. The shock shining through all that Aes Sedai serenity was quite satisfying, and the disgruntlement too. Shanella's eyes, pale blue in a dark, pretty face, seemed about to fall out of her head. Isal's mouth hung open until she saw Nynaeve looking at her and snapped it shut. What made you think of using fire? Dagdara asked in a strangled voice that sounded entirely too high for such a big woman. And earth? You used earth. Healing is spirit, water, and air. That opened the floodgate. Questions from every throat. But they were all the same question, really, just phrased differently. I don't know why, Nynaeve replied when she found an opening. It just seemed right. I've almost always used everything, which produced a round of admonitions. Healing with spirit, water, and air. It was dangerous to experiment with healing. A mistake could kill not only you, but your patient. She said nothing in reply, but the warnings died off quickly in rueful glances and smooth skirts. She had not killed anyone, and she had healed what they said could not be healed. Liana wore such a hopeful smile that it was almost painful. Nynaeve approached her with a smile of her own, masking the smoldering irritation inside. The
Be
yellow
right back.
Aja and all its vaunted knowledge of healing that she had been ready to beg on her knees to share. She knew more of healing than any of them. Watch carefully now. You'll not get another chance soon to see it done. She felt the joining clearly as she channeled, though she still could not have said what it was she had joined. It felt different than with Logain. It had with Swan as well. But as she kept telling herself, men and women were different. Light, I'm lucky this works on them as well as it did on him. That brought up an uncomfortable line of speculation. What if some things had to be healed differently in men than in women? Maybe she did not know so very much more than the Yellows after all. Liana's reaction differed from Swan's. No tears. She embraced Saidar and smiled beatifically, then released it, though the smile remained. Then she flung her arms around Nynaeve and hugged her till her ribs creaked, whispering, "Thank you, thank you, thank you," over and over. A murmur rose among the Yellows, and Nynaeve prepared to bask in their compliments. She would accept their apologies gracefully. Then she heard what they were saying. Used fire and earth as if she were trying to bore a hole through stone. That from Vector. A smoother touch would be better, Chanella agreed. See where fire might produce her problems with the heart, Thurva said, tapping her long nose. Beldomane, a plump Arafellan with silver bells in her hair, nodded thoughtfully. If the earth were combined with air just so, you see, fire woven into water, earth blended with the water. Nynaeve gaped. They had forgotten her completely. They thought they could do what she had just showed them. That they could. Mirella patted her arm. It did very well, she murmured. Don't worry. They will be all praises later. Right now they are still a little taken aback. Nynaeve sniffed mildly, but none of the Yellows seemed to notice. I hope this at least means I don't have to scrub pots anymore. Shiriam's head whipped around with a startled expression. Quiet, child. Whatever gave you that notion? She still had an arm around Swan, who was dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief in considerable embarrassment. If anyone could break any rule they chose, do whatever they chose, and escape punishment merely by doing some good to balance it, the world would be chaos. Nynaeve sighed heavily. She should have known. Stepping out from the other Yellows, Nisal cleared her throat, and in passing shot Nynaeve a glare that could only be called accusatory. I suppose this means we will have to gentle Logain again? She sounded as though she wanted to deny any of it had happened. Heads began nodding, and then Carlinia spoke, like an icicle stabbed into the room. Can we? Every eye turned to her, but she went on calmly, coolly. Ethically, can we consider supporting a man who can channel? A man trying to gather other men who can, while at the same time we go on as before, gentling those we find? Practically, what effect will it have on him when he learns? Distressing as it may be, as matters stand, he will see us as separate from the tower, and more importantly, from Elida and the Red Aja. If we gentle even one man, we may lose that distinction, and with it our chance to gain a hold on him before Elida does. Silence cloaked the room when she stopped. Aes Sedai exchanged troubled looks, and those directed at Nynaeve made Nisal's look laudatory. Sisters had died in capturing Logain, and even if he was safely shielded again, she had given them him to deal with all over again, and worse people besides. I think you should go, Shiriam said softly. Nynaeve was not about to argue. She made her curtsies as quickly and carefully as she could, and did her best not to run in raving. Outside, Elaine rose from the stone step. I'm sorry, Naive, she said, brushing her skirt. I was so excited I blurted out everything to Shiriam before I realized Ramonda and Delana were there. It doesn't matter, Naive said heavily, starting down the crowded street. It would have gotten out sooner or later. It just was not fair, though. I did something they said couldn't be done, and I still have to scrub pots. Elaine, I don't care what you say. We have to go. Carlinia was talking about getting a hold on Rand. This lot won't be any better than Elida. Tom or Julian will get horses for us, and Brigitte can just bite her elbow. It's too late, Elaine said miserably. Word is spreading already. Larissa Lindell and Zenair Godar swooped down from opposite directions like hawks on either side of Naive. Larissa was a bony woman whose plainness almost overcame Aes Sedai agelessness. Zenair slightly plump and haughty enough for two queens, but both wore faces of eager anticipation. They were Yellow Aja, though neither had been in the room when she healed Swan and Liana. I want to see you go through everything step by step, Nynaeve, Larissa said, laying hold of an arm. Nynaeve, Zenair said, seizing the other arm, I wager that I will find 100 things you never thought of if you repeat the weave often enough. Salita Toranis, Tyron, and almost as dark as one of the sea folk seemed to pop out of nowhere. Others ahead of me, I see. Well, burn my soul if I'll wait in line. I was here first, Salita, Zenair said firmly, and tightened her grip. I was first, Larissa said, tightening hers. Nynaeve shot a look of pure horror at Elaine, and got commiseration in return and a shrug. This was what Elaine had meant about too late. She would not have a waking moment to herself after this. Angry, Zenair was saying. I know 50 ways at the front of my head to make her angry enough to chew rocks. I can think of 100, Larissa said. I intend to break her block if it's the last thing I do. Magla Daronos shouldered her way into the group, and she had the shoulders for it. She looked as if she worked the sword or a blacksmith's hammer. You will break it, Larissa? Ah, I do have several ways in mind already to draw it out of her. Nynaeve just wanted to scream. It was all Swan could do not to embrace it and hold it. She thought she might start crying again. That would never do. Besides, it would seem like some fool novice's display to the women crowding around her in the waiting room. Every expression of wonder and delight, every warm welcome as if she had been away for years, came as balm, especially from those who had been friends before she became Amyrlin, before time and duty pulled them apart. Lelaine and Delana wrapped their arms around her as they had not in long years. Moiraine had been the only one closer, the only one beside Liana she had managed to keep after donning the stole, and duty had helped keep them together. It is so good to have you back, Lelaine laughed. So very good, Delana murmured warmly. Swan laughed, and had to scrub tears from her cheeks. Light, what was the matter with her? She had not wept this easily as a child. Maybe it was just joy at regaining Saidar, at all the Light knew altogether it was enough to unsettle anybody. She had never dared dream this day might come, and now that it had, she held nothing against any of these women. Not their cold distance before, not their insistence that she remember her place. The line between Aes Sedai and not Aes Sedai was clear. She had insisted on it before she was stilled, and it went without saying that she would again. And she knew how stilled women had to be dealt with for their own good, and the good of those who could still channel. Had to be dealt with. How strange it was, but that would never be so again. From the corner of her eye, she saw Gareth Bryn trotting up the stairs at the side of the room. Excuse me a moment, she said, and hurried after him. Even hurrying meant stopping every 2 steps to accept another congratulation all the way to the stairs, so she did not catch up until he was striding down a corridor on the 2nd floor. Rushing ahead, she planted herself in front of him. His mostly gray hair was wind-blown, his square face and worn buff coat dusty. He looked as solid as stone. Lifting a sheaf of papers, he said, "I have to drop this off, Swan," and tried to step around her. She moved to block him. "I've been healed. I can choose again." He nodded. Just nodded. "I heard some talk. I suppose this means you'll be channeling my shirts clean from now on. Maybe they actually will be clean now. I've regretted letting Min go so easily." Swan stared at him. The man was no fool. Why was he pretending not to understand? "I am Aes Sedai again. Do you really expect an Aes Sedai to do your laundry?" Just to drive it home, she embraced Saidar. That mist sweetness was so wonderful she shivered, wrapped him in flows of air, and lifted him. Tried to lift him. Gaping, she drew more, tried harder, until the sweetness stabbed like 1,000 hooks. His boots never stirred from the floor. It was impossible. True, the simple act of picking something up was one of the hardest in channeling, but she had been able to lift nearly 3 times her own weight. "Is this supposed to impress me?" Bryn said calmly, "or frighten me?" Shiriam and her friends gave their word. The Hall gave its word, and more importantly, you gave yours, Swan. I wouldn't let you get away from me if you were the Amelin again. Now undo whatever it is you've done. But when I get free of it, I'll turn you upside down and smack you for being childish. You're very seldom childish, so you needn't think I will let you start now." In a mere daze, she released the source. Not for his threat. He was capable of it. He had done it before, but not for that, and not for shock at being unable to pick him up. Tears seemed to well up in her like a fountain. She hoped that letting go of Saidar might stop them. A few still slid down her cheeks, though, however hard she blinked. Gareth was cupping her face in his hands before she knew he had moved. "White woman, don't tell me I frightened you. I didn't think being dropped in a pit with a pack of leopards would frighten you." "I am not frightened," she said stiffly. Good. She could still lie. Tears building inside. "We have to work out some way not to be at one another's throat all the time," he said quietly. "There is no reason for us to work out anything. They were coming. They were coming. Oh, Light, she could not let him see. "Just leave me alone, please. Please, just go." For a wonder, he hesitated only a moment before doing as she asked. With the sound of his boots behind her, she managed to make it around the corner into the crossing hallway before the dam burst, and she sank to her knees, weeping piteously. She knew what it was now. Ulrich, her warder, her dead warder, murdered when Elaida deposed her. She could lie, the 3 oaths were still gone, but some part of her bond to Ulrich, a bond flesh to flesh and mind to mind, had been resurrected. The pain of his death, the pain first masked by the shock of what Elaida intended, and then buried by stilling, that pain filled her to the brim. Huddled against the wall, bawling, she was only glad Gareth was not seeing this. "I have no time to fall in love, burning." The thought was a bucket of cold water in her face. The pain remained, but the tears stopped and she scrambled to her feet. Love? That was as impossible as she could not think of anything impossible enough. The man was impossible.
Alright, everyone. I'm gonna call Into This Life for tonight. I want to thank everyone who stopped by. Everyone keeps stopping by and chilling with me. Definitely appreciate all y'all's support. For next time, everyone, y'all stay safe out there.